at 4 p.m. I will call this meeting to order, and we'll begin with roll call.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Here.
Commissioner Starkey?
Here.
Commissioner Greeno?
Here.
Chair Short?
Here.
Consent.
Commissioner Inscore?
Here.
Got to get that out of the way.
Join me with in reciting our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have one item that we need to take a vote on. It is a consent agenda item. We had some claims come in last minute in the amount of $5,384.82, which would make our total budget transfer amount $7,129. And
Chair Short?
yes,
So specifically, I would request that the board, as an urgency item that arose subsequent to the posting of the agenda and requires action before the next board meeting, I request that the board consider adding claim 9287 to pay U.S. Bank in the amount of $5,384.82. And in addition, I'd like to suggest that we change the amount of the budget transfer to $7,129, as we needed to add lines for increasing the household expense line 20140 by $350 and the professional services well monitoring line 20232 by $2,455. So bringing that total budget transfer to $7,129, and that is balanced again by deductions from the workers' compensation line in a total of $7,129.
so for line 1.2, we can make that correction when we come to the consent agenda item, but as for the emergency item,
Chair, I would make a motion that we approve a urgency item identified as 1.3 under consent in order to pay claim number 9287 in the amount of $5,384.82, and that this arose after the publishing of the agenda.
Second.
thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Are we just motioning to add the item?
Just to add the item, that's all this is, yes. Do we have any public online, excuse me? No public with us online, thank you. Would you let me know if that changes? Appreciate that. Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll go to the vote. It takes a 4/5 vote to pass this item as an emergency item. If you would poll the vote, please.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Starkey?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Chair Short?
Yes, thank you. So now we will move to the consent agenda.
Chair, I would ask that we pull items number 1.2 and 1.3 for discussion and action, separate than item number 1.1.
Thank you. We will pull item 1.2 and 1.3. Any other discussion about the consent agenda?
I'll motion that we approve the consent agenda 1.1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda items? Seeing no public comment, Chair, will you poll the vote, please?
Commissioner Starkey?
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Chair Short?
Yes. Mr. Inscore, 1.2.
Chair Short, if under the direction of staff, I would ask that we amend consent item number 1.2 to $7,129.12. I guess that's just 1.2.
That's the next
to
item.
reflect an updated budget transfer number.
Thank you for that. So do we have a second? Second. We do have a
Second.
second. Thank you, Mr. Greeno. Do we have any public comment on consent agenda item 1.2? Any other discussion?
I have a question. So if it was originally $4,324 And then we have 1.3 that's been added, and it's 5,384. That totals a lot more than $7,000 to me.
Two separate things. The 7129 is, there's an additional, separate from the 5384 added to that. Director Ward, would you give
Yes,
that to us?
I'd be happy to answer this. You're correct, that would be a greater amount, but what we're doing is we're adding to the original budget transfer, which was 4,324, two amounts. One for professional well services monitoring of 2,455, and another one of household expense of 350. And I believe if you add the 2,455 plus 350 plus the 4324, you end up with 7129.
Okay, can you give me those numbers again, and what is the line item that they should be on? Because I don't have any extra.
I'm sorry.
Valerie, would you like to look at mine?
Yeah. So the household expense was, gosh, a bill that just came in today, and unfortunately, I'm forgetting what that was. The well servicing was North Coast Labs, and that was for well monitoring that occurred in last fiscal year, and we just got the bill. So anything that needs to be paid from last fiscal year needs to be have enough money in each of those budget lines. So that's what this budget transfer does, is it adds to those budget lines.
Okay, and then just in the future, if we are going to do that, if we could just get an updated thing, since, so it's more visual for me, if we can have
Absolutely,
that.
and I apologize for not having that for you.
Yeah, thank you.
So we have a motion and a second for item 1.2 in the amount of $7,129. Public comment? Did I call for public comment? There is no public comment, so
Chair, just one thing, and I think it's goes to the point that Commissioner Starkey just made. I'd like the minutes to reflect the detail of why the change was made. I think that would be good for the reference for looking back over the minutes of why the change was made and what those items were, please.
I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Yep.
Mr. Ward, you can handle that?
Absolutely,
without a
we'll make sure
problem,
that
I'm
happens.
Thank you.
Okay. Kira, if you would pull the vote.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Starkey?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Chair Short?
Yes. Thank you. And 1.3, this is claim number 9287 in the amount of $5,384.82. Do I have,
I'd make a motion that we approve 1.3, this urgency item that was came to our attention after the publishing of the agenda.
thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. Is there any public comment on this item? No public comment here either. So, Kira, will you pull the vote, please?
Commissioner Tompkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Starkey?
Yes, but I do have a question.
So sorry. Go ahead with your question.
My question is it's an urgency item. What happened that we needed the pig oil only spill kits? Was there an urgent situation?
I can explain that. So the reason why this is an urgency item is that the bill came in and it was above $5,000. And our general rules are anything, even if it's under budget and approved within that budget, if it's over $5,000 as a claim, then it needs to come to this board. And so it just so happened that the credit card bill came in above $5,000, in part because Kira, under the oil grant, had purchased a bunch of spill kits to give to our local fire departments, which we'll be talking about in just a moment.
Okay. Again, I don't mean to be nitpicky. I just really like to understand it. So I vote yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
That's great.
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Chair Short?
Yes, and we are publicly acknowledging that that's all Kira's fault that we had to do it. Right? Okay.
Yes, if Kara didn't work so hard to support our local fire departments, none of this would have been necessary.
There you
So it's all
go.
her fault for being so supportive. Just saying.
Okay. Moving on to our director's report. Thank you, Mr. Inscoe.
Oh, my goodness.
So I have a few graphics. We'll break up the meeting a little bit with this. Oops, okay. So we're all ready to the spill kits. Oops,
Well, we've got
Hello.
2 different types of spills.
okay. From beginning. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to give a shout out of gratitude to the volunteers who helped clean up after the 4th of July and the July 5th, as organized by Gustavo Vasquez of the Smith River Alliance. So we really appreciate all those efforts, and looked good after the 4th. Really appreciate that. You already approved the consent agenda, which we've discussed. We also took a field trip. Oops. Sorry. There we are. So the task force took a field trip to tour the Recology Humboldt facility in Samoa and the Hambro Recycling facility in Arcata. So I'll take you through a quick tour of those. Slideshow from beginning. Okay. So this is what our recyclables look like when they get unloaded from the truck in Samoa, and then they start going up the conveyor line into the sorting lines. This is where the business happens, and really where the rubber hits the road is these folks sorting out our recyclables. And they throw materials into these chutes, which then go to hoppers below, and then gates and a series of conveyor belts will, material by material, bring those sorted materials up into their baler and prepare those materials for shipment. So this is the tour. And this one was interesting because on the left-hand side, you'll see a collection of metals, including a bicycle frame and some folks' pieces from old barbecues and things like that. These are items that were taken from people's recycling carts. They don't belong there, but you can almost see the mental process of, hey, this is metal, I'll put this in the recycling bin. And even though it really doesn't belong in the recycling bin, and it increases the cost of our recycling program, because some of those materials could be recovered, and they get sorted here, and some of those do get recovered. But in general, they don't belong in the recycling bins. There are better places for them, and we do recycle steel at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. So on the right-hand side, you see those materials. In that case, it's cardboard that's going down into that hopper, going into the baler. And in the background, you can see the baled materials of mixed plastics, paper, and cardboard. So here's the bales ready for shipping, and you can see that foil one, how tight that is. They're nice and square. And then we went over to the Hambro Recycling Yard in Arcata, which is a pretty impressive operation in that they were able to get it up and running pretty quickly, and it is now the only buyback station in Humboldt County, and I don't believe there are any buybacks in Mendocino, so that means that Hambro Recycling is operating the only buyback facilities north of Mendocino. And and here we're seeing a little video of the operations manager at the Hambro Recycling facility going through how they do their tickets. So a customer would come in, they'd put their materials on that scale, he'd type in what materials they have, he'd weigh each material and then move it off the scale, and then that customer would get a receipt, and then they'd walk over to the next place. We'll see sort of a Batman photography thing going on. But it fits on the screen this way. So we'll eventually take a sideways walk over to the place where they get paid, but this allows the tour to happen on the screen. So we're walking kind of sideways.
All of your heads.
And so into this room here, it's not sideways when you walk into it, but but that's the window where the customers get paid.
Okay. I would have done the same thing.
So that was a task force tour, and in case the board is interested, we could arrange a similar tour for the board members. We have had one in the past, but it is useful to see and hear the process by which our recyclables go through to get sorted and in preparation for marketing, because it's instructive. So I appreciate the task force going out there. I really appreciate Recology and Hambro for giving us a tour around, but in general, a good exercise for all. So moving on, tomorrow, the new local assistance folks from Cal Recycle are going to be coming up for a tour, so we'll be spending some time with them looking at our facilities and programs. And then looking forward on tonight's agenda, we've got agenda item 6.1 looking at legislation. Item 6.2, I'll give a PowerPoint on the status of SB 1383 and what we're doing there. Item 6.3, we'll talk about outreach at the fair and how we want to approach that. Item 6.4 is talking about issuing a request for proposals for the Forest Service grant management. And now is a good time to talk about the spill kits. So, like I said, I think this is just a great new effort from our oil recycling program, and since Kira is the one managing that program, I welcome her to say a few words about what we've done on these spill kits.
Alrighty, so yeah, this is the part that's my fault. So I am juggling a few different grants, and the thought that I like to keep at the foremost in my head while utilizing any funding is how can I best benefit our community. So when I saw the recent tar spill on 199, I started trying to figure out a way I could use our resources to help and hopefully get more of the community equipment for future spills. So I investigated the possibility of purchasing spill kits with oil grant resources, which I luckily found to be an acceptable expenditure, which is very lucky because it's pretty narrow. And during a meeting with the newly structured Office of Emergency Services new manager, Maya Mello said that she would ask at her next meeting who would be interested in receiving a spill kit. And I'm glad to be able to supply our county's fire departments with these spill kits because we all want to preserve our environment and clean water to the best of our ability, and to that end we are in the process of giving spill kits to Crescent City Fire Department, Yurok Public Safety, Fort Dick Fire Department, Gasky Fire Department, and Smith Fire Department. So each kit contains absorbents, booms, diapers, and heavy-duty disposal bags. Also, although the agencies have expertise in dealing with spill situations, each kit does contain simple step-by-step directions with pictures explaining how to properly contain a spill. And anyone who has come, I have let them know if they have any questions when anything happens to go ahead and give us a call as well. And I also got some, and as you can see, these are very large, and most of the fire departments have taken 2 spill kits.
Oh, that's just one kit?
That's just one kit. I also got for our agency, for rapid response at our outer sites, because there's only one person there, one operator, I got handheld in a tote spill kits. But if there's something that's falling into a creek near where we are, and both of our sites have creeks, this spill kit is really light. We can carry it hands-free, run down to a creek, deploy it, and hopefully save our drinking water. So.
You are so forgiven for messing up.
So Kira,
There's going to be more mistakes in the future.
No, this is amazing. This is great.
So Kira, if, once one of these is used, there's going to need to be refilled, right? How will that cost be met?
We're going to have to burn that bridge when we get to
Okay.
it.
All right. All right. Thank
So,
you.
but in the meantime, we have some response. We have some response, and we have some ability.
Yeah.
So there's more ability that we have in the county
Okay.
now. So.
That's really great. This is
Cool.
great.
So,
Thank you.
just a quick question. Did you reach out to Klamath Fire as well to see if they wanted one?
Actually, Maya Mello talked to all the fire departments.
Oh, okay.
And so the Klamath Emergency Services, basically, their emergency department is the one who took it, and I believe they took it as a whole for them as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Kira. Great expansion of the program and ability to respond to spills. So the final thing on the director's report is attached to the director's report is approval of our request to reduce our post-closure maintenance multiplier. And this was the last year that we could submit that request. So we've gotten our last one. It's now knocked down to 15, and that's as low as it goes. So, but it's been a good thing. And as far as I know, there aren't a lot of other communities that have applied for that reduction. So I'm glad to have done that effectively so many times. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those, or I can move on to the financials.
Any questions from anybody for Mr. Ward? All right, Mr. Ward, go on with finance.
Regarding the financials, cash flow, we've got about 1.6 million in the bank plus 198,000 for last month's rent. Looking at accounts receivable, again, you'll see that most of the anything that's over 90 days has already been turned over to receivership or collections, except for that one large item where we're owed $15,000, and that is Caltrans. So I just had a discussion with Caltrans today. Essentially, we're due payments for the Clean California events that we had. And we had a conversation, and they provided me with their excuses, and we haven't been paid yet. So hopefully we will be.
With them, do we still follow through with our collections policy with, late fees and different things? Do we treat everyone the same?
I hear what you're saying. We have not assessed those. In general, state agencies are loath to pay them. More or less, they just don't pay them, and you get the other amount. But I could look into that if you would like me to.
Because we require everyone else to pay on it in a timely manner.
Yeah, and it's a big chunk of change. And that's been part of the challenge of this program. Caltrans wanted to do dump days. We gave them the feedback that we really didn't like the term dump days because while it's popular and easy to understand, it inspires the wrong behavior in terms of hoarding. So after much discussion, they were able to compromise and allow us to call them bulky item dump days. And that took a lot of work just to get to that point. But that was their compromise. And so where we're standing now is that we've had 3 of these events. We've had one in Klamath, we've had one in Gasky, we've had one in Smith River. They owe us about 45 grand. And until they pay us the amount that's owed, we're not in discussions about any further events.
I was just mentioning to Chair Short, I think that this is something that maybe as a joint agency encouragement, obviously we've received updates about the Clean California programs through the local Transportation Commission, and I think that the Transportation Commission can certainly help the authority in encouraging, since we work with Caltrans constantly, that if you're going to promote this, and they have, to the community at large, they also need to be a good partner and pay the money, because this is all grant money anyway.
Well, and they said they feel bad, they apologized, but and it's not money.
Doesn't do any good.
Well, feel bad's when you forget somebody's birthday. This is not that. This is well. I think that certainly we can pass this on through our local Transportation Commission as well, because it was highlighted at multiple meetings at our Transportation Commission of the great work and how thankful they were for the partnership here in Delaware County. I think they're still trying to figure out where they're going to do with all those tires that they pulled out of Klamath. Maybe they didn't anticipate what the magnitude would be, but that doesn't change the fact that they need to be responsible for the costs.
And Caltrans staff in general has worked with us pretty well. The local staff has done what they can, but they work within a larger system, and I believe that just like our accounting office will let us know that we have to bring claims to go through the formal approval process, I got the impression from Caltrans that it's somewhat similar. They thought we were going to be able to be paid under a utility account, which would go faster, and then their accounting office said, no, you can't do that. You have to do it through another process. And so it was a new program for them. As they've tried to roll it out quickly, it didn't roll out well, and they're learning. So
we just need to let the wheels grind.
I think that's it, right. And I believe in the good intent of the people that we've been working with. I believe they are individually trying.
Okay.
So a periodic hope might be,
Nudge.
Well, I figured the only leverage we had is we're not going to talk about any other events until we get paid for the last ones.
maybe they don't care.
I don't know, but that's where I'm standing.
And while I appreciate that, the dilemma that I have with that is that the community has, the messaging that has gone out to the community has been that there's going to be.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to stay on top of this because we've purposely asked people, especially the Crescent City area, wait.
Yeah.
We're going to do something for you as well. We're going to do these others first. And so since we communicated that messaging, I think we have a responsibility to the community to follow up on this so that we don't just say, because my fear is that Caltrans will pull back and their message will be, well, the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority said they didn't want to do anymore, which is not, and we don't want that message sent out either.
Thank you for that caution. And we are talking about the possibility about some day in September. But as I said,
Okay.
until we get paid, we're not having very deep conversations.
Yeah.
Yes,
Probably
please.
be good.
Please.
John Perry with Recology. I just wanted to mention that Dave also contacted us about further events. I wasn't aware that we hadn't been paid, that you hadn't been paid. You have been paid. I know, we've been paid. You paid us, that's what I'm saying. So, going forward, now that I know this as well, we will also refrain from doing anything until we are all paid. So, I just want to let you know that when they contact us, we'll refer them to.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's exactly because of the payments to Recology and others that we're out, the money that we're out, because we've paid our bills.
Yeah.
So, continuing on with the
Weird.
financials,
Like we should pay our
looking
bills,
at
or they
claims
should pay
approved by director, you'll see that the largest payments, once again, are to Hambro WSG for the good services they provided at the Del Norte County Transfer Station, to the Del Norte County auditors for the interfund cost plan for paying for IT and auditing and personnel services, to the auditor paying credit and debit card charges. And then the fourth highest payment was to Castle Tire for managing those tires. So continuing on with the financial reports, once again, June was up compared to the previous month, which was good and as we were hoping and expecting. But if you look at item 2.5, which is the summary of the authority's revenue during the last fiscal year, we ended up being $17,059 ahead of budget. So budgeting worked well, but we were below expectations in terms of revenues at the transfer station and above expectations in terms of revenues from the franchise fees. So, but on the whole, I'd say the budgeting was working well, and we stayed within our fiscal goals. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Considering inflation right now, I think we're doing well.
For-
And I just want to inject in here, for the record, I used the transfer station with my little trailer with some waste from my yard. I was impressed. Very efficient. I was third behind two other trailers, and I waited less than 5 minutes. Very nice. And a Recology truck came in while I was waiting. Never interfered with anybody. It was just like everything worked perfectly. I'm very impressed with that.
Good. So you were able to unload on the floor safely?
Very safely, and efficiently. I mean, I was directed in by somebody who made sure that I pulled up beside another truck and trailer. I was directed carefully, and yeah, I don't see how you could do a better job. I really don't.
That's good to hear. I will pass that along to our operations crew.
Yeah.
And just to echo that, I had a similar experience dropping my own construction materials off. Had to wait for a Recology truck, no big deal. But then once I got in, was directed by your fellas on the floor, everything went really smooth. I was plenty happy with the service.
Excellent. I am pleased to hear that. Summer months do tend to be busy, and one of the things that does regularly happen, to if anybody's watching at home, people tend to push the last minutes of the summer hours. And so just remember that we're open 8 to 5 weekdays, 9 to 5 on weekends, closed major holidays, but especially during the summer months, we ask that you be in there in time to have completed unloading by 5 o'clock. So you probably don't want to bring in that huge load right at the end of the day. You might want to plan on arriving at 4:30 or 4:45 rather than at 4:59. But if you're in line by 5 o'clock, we'll give you service.
May not be that happy to do it, but no, I'm kidding. Okay, thank you for those reports, Mr. Ward. We have no landfill post-closure reports to consider, no transfer station items either, so we'll move on to collections franchise. 5.1, discussion and possible action regarding the location, style, and servicing of Recology Del Norte's paired street side trash and recycle bins.
So Monday morning, we met with representatives from the city and Recology and had conversations with representatives from the county to talk about the street side containers. As the board may recall, recently, in the last couple of years, as we extended Recology's franchise, they swapped out all of the street side containers that were metal and rusting for these city-selected concrete receptacles. So you've got a recycling receptacle next to each trash receptacle, and what we found is that birds will scavenge materials from there, and particularly the ravens will pull stuff out, and then the seagulls will start doing the sorting. So, and we haven't trained them as to what goes in what bin, so it just kind of ends up on the sorting floor, as it were. This was a concern to everybody. Of course, we want to keep our community neat and clean, and that's part of what these bins are intended to do. So we discussed the potential for installing flaps, and I'm grateful that John looked into what the cost of those would be. And essentially, we're looking at a little over 10 grand or around that to put flaps on all of the bins along the coast, which are the greatest concern. If we were to do every bin, we'll be looking about $23,400. And then the county was particularly interested in possibly placing another pair of containers down along South Beach. So we currently have a total of 60 locations, 48 inside the city limits, 12 outside the city limits in the county and the greater Crescent City area between South Beach and the Point St. George parking lot. And so John did confirm that we have another pair of bins we could deploy out to South Beach, but the county has not yet asked us to do that as they're looking in to make sure that they don't need to go through any permitting process. I did clarify that one of the reasons that these bins were selected is that the previous metal bins were blowing over, and then cracking and things like that. And so there was discussion about possibly pouring a slab and bolting those containers down. And part of the reason why these cement bins were selected is you don't need to pour a slab, you don't need to bolt them down, you can just put them where they are. So the county was also possibly interested in just having an extra set of bins down there on the summer months, but essentially it's enough of a trouble to pick them up and move them that you might as well, once you deploy them, service them all year rather than keep moving them twice a year. So once the county gives us word that they actually want those bins, then we can already deploy them. And I'm currently working with Recology on what it would take to purchase those additional flaps. In my view, and I welcome the board's input on this, Recology was, for the contract extension, they were expected to replace all these bins, which they did at their expense. They ordered them, they did the labor for getting them ready to go, and they put them in place. Because this is after the city has already specified that which they want for the bins, and Recology already purchased and deployed what the city specified, this seems like an additional expense. And it seems like this is an expense that this agency can cover, because we want to see our community neat and clean, and we don't want these litter bins to be a source of litter themselves. So with the board's concurrence, I will continue to work with Recology on try to address this ongoing issue and try to deal with it as rapidly as possible. One other thing I want to mention here is that as we were discussing with Jason Wiley of the city and Eric Weir about what might be able to be done and the time delay of how long it'll take to order the new doors and get them installed, he was looking at possibly working with some welders or other people who might be able to fashion some make-do situation that essentially would put some kind of flap on that door so that it would not be as easy for the birds to access. But that would be a makeshift thing, and we were clear about who was doing what, so to the extent that the city wants to do that, that would be a city expense.
Okay, in my understanding, there is only one paired container left? Like if the county wanted to put 2 or 3 on South Beach?
We could order more. Under the contract currently, there's a total of 60, and there's 12 additionals. And in this last round, because John has good operational experience, he knew they would need some extras. So he had 3 extras. He's willing to deploy 1 of them, but that's it. So,
Okay.
so if we wanted more, we could do those additional considerations, but it would also mean a change order.
They're changing the contract. Yeah, sure. Totally understand. Do we have any other comments from?
Yeah, I live on 4th Street, within 4 blocks of the end of 4th Street, where there's an overlook and a set of these bins. And the birds are getting in there too. And then there's always the people who are too lazy to put it in the bin. They just set their stuff on beside the bin. And then there's the people who just toss it out of the window. But yeah, we've noticed that between the birds and the bins overflowing, and I'm wondering if that's also an issue in some of these others where maybe more frequent servicing it would be helpful.
Well, I'm thinking we're already at 6 days a week? Six days a week for emptying all the...
Yeah.
You don't get on the recording if you're not at the mic there, so appreciate you coming up.
So I just recently spoke with the gentleman that runs that 5 days a week, and we just had a long conversation before Ted reached out to me, and that he has seen a lot of illegal dumping inside the cans, a lot of residential garbage. And, you know, that's a problem we had before as well. It has not stopped. I did mention in the meeting recently that we had seen the recycle become a lot cleaner with these new sets until June. Once we started seeing more people in our community, the recycling has become additional trash, you know, so yeah. But it is a lot better in the off season. You know, our community is doing a great job using those recycling containers as they're meant to be, but the extra garbage, a lot of it is illegal dumping, and, you know, I haven't seen a good answer for that yet. So, but we are servicing them, Monday through Friday and then Sunday mornings. So,
I have actually a question for
Sure.
you. So these flaps, right, have they been tested? Are they going to be
so
effective?
when I did talk to the purveyor, they actually have never had any on the coastline before. So they worked with their engineers, because when I got the email from Ted, I went to work trying to get that information for everybody. I don't think I gave you a copy, did I, Ted? No. Let me see if they're here, if I have them with me. I do. So I'll step up and just show you these briefly here. So that's
Oh, okay.
Oh, they're talking about not adding a little flap. You're talking about replacing that whole door, so it has a flap.
Oh, I
correct. So
see.
so these doors are not painted, they're powder coated, and that's for our area, for the salt weather.
Right.
They're 511 stainless steel. And so they're talking about replacing the whole door. And this, if you look in the picture, the lower picture to the left corner, the original 6 that we purchased, which actually the Solid Waste Authority had some grant money left over, and they purchased those as a test. It's because they wanted to get them here, I believe it was last July. And so we got them in, before the holiday, got them placed. That has the circular that goes all the way up through. And then there was a discussion when those got here with the city, Solid Waste Authority, and us, and everybody was kind of in agreement that it looked like that flap was going to get destroyed by people, breaking it. And we thought, okay, this is going to be more of a problem maintenance-wise, long-term-wise. And then so there was a decision made amongst the group that we were going to go to the style that's in the right-hand picture here. It's just straight across. So now it looks like to create a flap, we need to go back to the original version. And I talked to them, and they said that, this is the best way. It's going to be a piano-style hinge on the back. Everything is going to stay stainless steel. The stuff that we're going to fabricate, I did reach out to see if we could get some paint codes. They don't have them because it's powder coat. So we'll have to match. I sent out that email today. We'll have to match the color if we do any fabrication on these to get us through the summer and the peak seasons. And then when we get the new doors, swapping these out is really easy. It's just getting them here. Like we talked about, everything's like, 8 weeks lead time. So, and he said the materials have gone up tremendously, and they're not stopping. So the prices on this is what we have today is like this week's prices. Next week, we don't know. Next week, next month, it's going to go on. So that's where we're at with those. Was there any other questions on that? Sure.
Not a question, but just in the interim, if we're going to do some retrofitting, we do have a local powder coater that can color match and do all this work here in
Perfect.
Crescent City, and
Yeah,
I can get you that information.
Excellent. Yeah.
Have them do work for me.
And really, it's going to be very minimal, because the engineering from what they're saying within the city, that, they have some people that can really get us dialed in. And if they come up with something, and I've sent them, I'm in the process of giving them 2 doors, one of each style, so they can look at what needs to be done right now to help our community. Once that's done, they get them fabricated. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to do it. I only have like 4 spare doors. They're going to have to take a couple doors off, get them fabricated, put them on, take a couple more off. We'll have to, but we're willing to work with that. It's 2 pins for these doors to come off on the inside, so we can pop these pins, put the new ones there with the flaps, and obviously we're going to go to wherever everyone tells us that the need is first. So,
Dr.
Great.
Ward, do we have
Another question?
are you going to need a budget adjustment? Let's say the board was of the mindset that we're willing to cover the cost for all of these bins. Would that require a budget adjustment? Do you think you have sufficient budget in a line where you could cover this?
I would need to come back probably and look at where the money would be coming from, but since we just had this meeting on Monday, you're getting the current status.
I guess my question is from what John just said, because of the continually escalation of costs and so forth, is I would be in favor of us moving forward with this and giving you authorization, and if need be, to bring back a budget adjustment then that would be fine, but I would not want this to wait a month for another meeting to act on it, is my concern.
Thank you for that guidance. If the rest of the board concurs with that, then I can go ahead and do what's necessary, and then we can, if necessary, bring a budget transfer to the next meeting, and we can get the ball rolling in the meantime.
Sure.
So, yeah, I had some more questions. But I guess my thing is that we've got a couple different options here, right? The city might manufacture something that could work, or we're going to purchase brand-new doors from the company we got these from. So I don't know that we know enough to move forward on something yet, but I could be wrong. I'm trying to understand, make sense of all this. So.
Yeah. In general, my approach is that up to about $10,000, I recognize this as a community problem that needs to be addressed. So we're going to take steps to try to address it. And if it's getting in the range of $20,000, you know, chances are when they need a budget transfer of some kind, we'll be talking about this next meeting.
I guess, and I think it's a good point, Val, I understood that what the city was contemplating was a temporary fix,
Okay.
not a permanent solution,
That's
but I could be wrong about that. Okay.
So I'm in agreement with Commissioner Inscore, is that let's go ahead and give direction that we move forward with this, and then bring it so that you just have that, you know, kind of authority if everybody
Do we
agrees.
have consensus all the way around on that one?
Yes, you do.
Certainly do have it from me.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
So-
Thank you.
With costs the way they are.
Yeah.
Or ask the birds to move.
And ask the people to
I've
quit
tried
dumping their household garbage
outreach
in
to
it.
birds. I don't know. Signage, pamphlets, nothing's
Nothing
working.
seems to be working.
Yeah.
This is critical. That kind of mess is, you know, makes us look bad. And,
Agreed. Nobody
you know,
wants it.
tourist income is critical to our community.
I agree.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Michael. Okay, you got good enough direction from all of our conversation here?
Yeah, there was quite a bit of it.
And I just want to say one more time to Recology, thank you. I had a constituent come and ask me if we could get garbage cans down at the very, very north end of Pebble Beach Drive. And the response was the metal garbage cans, but then next time I drove by, there was these beautiful cement ones. So I can't thank you guys enough for what you do for our community. So thank you.
Good job.
Okay. Moving on to General Solid Waste Authority matters, 6.1, status report regarding activities related to SB 1383, compliance and discussion and possible action regarding Amendment 1 to the Professional Services Agreement with Pitto and Pitto Consulting, increasing the total not to exceed amount to $15,000. Ted?
Yes, thank you, Chair Short. So I'll give a brief summary of where we're at with respect to SB 1383, which of course is the statewide law calling for local governments to change the way they're managing organics, including yard debris and food scraps. Particularly for us, it means we're focused on how we can expand food recovery in the coming years. So I'm going to show again some of the slides you've seen before, just to remind you of some of the things that we have ahead. So we've already submitted our initial report in April 2022. Our first annual report is due in October, so that's coming up, and we have to do capacity planning this month. So I've started on that process, but it is due by the end of the month. But looking at 2024, we need to have the ability to move against non-compliant entities. That would be primarily the responsibility of the county environmental health department. We are still under law required to provide separated organics collection services starting by the start of 2027 unless the law changes. So again, to reiterate what I've said before, I need convincing that we will reduce our methane or greenhouse gas emissions by collected or organic food waste. I need convincing, because in our community, I need convincing. I just don't believe it. So that will be an ongoing topic of discussion, and I anticipate some legislation associated with that as well. So looking at our responsibilities, we have to secure access to edible food recovery by 2022. Thankfully, the Del Norte and adjacent tribal lands Food Council, the Del Norte Food Rescue Program is running, so we're glad that that's already in operations. This year we'll be doing expanded outreach and education to the community about how to compost in your backyard, about how to reduce food waste in the home. We've already started working with some of the tribes on that. The procurement requirements will also occur around the same time as the collection requirements, so we'll be looking at those. And currently, we're, through Mary Pitto, we're helping the Del Norte County Department of Environmental Health set up their monitoring and enforcement protocols. As we are not responsible for all aspects of this, but we are interested in trying to help every agency do their part of their compliance activities. We're essentially lending out Mary Pitto as our consultant to help establish those programs. So once again, this is a graphic you've seen before, but we are just part of the teamwork that's necessary to bring SB 1383 to fruition here in Del Norte County. And to be clear, this agency will be monitoring and reporting and helping facilitate. But part of that monitoring and reporting may be a situation where we're monitoring and reporting a program that isn't being implemented either by the city or the county, because that's the role that we take, and we each have to respect our roles and play in our lanes. So just clarifying responsibilities. So both the city and the county have adopted enforceable ordinances, which I'm very happy about, because that did enable us to receive grant funding from Cal Recycle. We received a $50,774 grant. That's to help us through 2024 with these initial phases of implementation. And the grant-funded activities, we're in discussion with the Del Norte Food Rescue Coalition to look at how we can expand our food rescue capacity. And specifically, we're looking at the possibility of purchasing mobile solar-powered walk-in refrigerator freezers. We're shopping right now. We're looking at how we can build that infrastructure, but as you all know, we have power outages, and so having a solar-powered one has a number of different benefits, but likely we will be purchasing something like that in the next couple of years, and we probably will continue to adjust the budget on that grant program. So looking at the jurisdiction requirements, again, this is reiterating something you've seen before, but essentially we each have a role to play in trying to make food rescue work. And so the thrust of this PowerPoint is this slide, which is what have we been doing lately to bring us into compliance with SB 1383. Well, we've identified the Tier 1 and Tier 2 generators. Those are the entities that have a lot of food scraps that could be recovered and rescued and redistributed. So it's the major grocery stores and the school district. Those are our Tier 1 and Tier 2 generators. The city and the county have already adopted enforceable ordinances. Thank you for that. We have established an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, between the city, the county, and the authority about our respective roles in implementing this law. There's been a MOU established between the Del Norte Food Rescue and the city, as well as Del Norte Food Rescue and the county. So Del Norte Food Rescue is the entity providing those food rescue services. Del Norte County Environmental Health has agreed to do monitoring, and after 2024, they'll also be responsible for enforcement. There are currently agreements between the Del Norte Food Council and Grocery Outlet, Wild Rivers Market, and Safeway, and Mary Pitto is working on establishing an agreement with Walmart, or getting a copy of the agreement that they have. The grant funds that we've been awarded will be used to build food recovery capacity and do outreach, as well as establishing reporting mechanisms. And then before the end of this month, we will be producing a edible food capacity estimate. So that's what we've been doing on SB 1383, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Ward?
I have a comment, and this was a huge undertaking, and I think you're chipping away at it, and I'm very, very grateful. And I understand what 1383 is now, when a year and a half ago I had no idea. So.
Thank you for that. And I've appreciated both the engaged board discussion and the swift action that was required by both the city and the county to adopt those ordinances. That was more of a rush job than I think anybody was really comfortable with, but it did enable us to get in under the wire to get approval for that grant. So I really do appreciate that.
So I'm curious that restaurants are not included in.
We're not big enough.
I didn't catch it. I didn't hear the restaurant part.
We don't have any restaurants of that size, is the short answer. There are restaurants that would qualify, but they aren't in Delaware County.
I just want to add one quick little story. I'm at my mom's house the other day, and she goes, "You're not going to believe the craziest thing I heard." She goes, "It's got to be a lie. LA has to wash their garbage." I'm like, it makes sense, right? Because with you want to get that food waste off the actual plastic containers and that sort of thing. So, I mean, other counties are having to do this, and if the laws don't change, we're going to have to be hit with that too.
I appreciate all the work. I especially appreciate the ongoing work with Mary Pitto. Obviously, the lift, as heavy as it is, would probably be insurmountable without the guidance that she provides. And so I'm certainly in favor of us approving Amendment 1 to increase this compensation up to $15,000 for the great resource that she is for our community.
What a perfect segue. I couldn't have said it better.
Well, I'll take that as a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any public comment on the amendment to the Pitto and Pitto Consulting agreement? No public comment, so we will bring it back to the board. If you would poll the vote, please.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Starkey?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Chair Short?
Yes.
Thank you.
So Mr. Ward will reserve that plot of land to the north of the transfer station for a future garbage washing. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I'll get back to work here. 6.2, discussion and possible action regarding bills from the California legislature during the 2021-22 legislative session.
This is a summary report, and no action is required, but I specifically wanted to highlight that it has been a very active legislative season. A lot of bills are still in play, and I've been in conversation with our colleagues at the California Product Stewardship Council to see if there's any additional advocacy the board might be able to weigh in on. And essentially, the board's already in support of some of the bills that are in play. But the big thing that happened is SB 54 got signed into law already. So what that means is that there was going to be a ballot initiative to address single-use plastics. And essentially, that ballot initiative was enough of a concern to the entities that they started lobbying hard to try to come up with something else. And so this is what they were able to come up with. And essentially, the bill would require the producers, as defined, of covered materials to ensure that those materials are either source reduced or recyclable or compostable, so that not less than 65% of the covered plastic material would be recycled on or after January 2032. So bottom line is single-use plastics will they will change in the years ahead, because they will either need to be recyclable or compostable, and that is no small challenge, especially for single-use to-go foodware as currently deployed. I anticipate significant changes there, because let's just say it's very easy for a manufacturer to claim something is recyclable or compostable, much harder to actually make it work. So the other laws are in play, but I don't think any specific action is required, but I'd be happy to discuss any of them if the board has interest.
Any of you have any questions about any of the other legislative items? Okay. That was just a discussion item. We'll go on to 6.3, discussion and possible action regarding outreach activities planned for the Del Norte Fair, August 4th through the 7th, 2022.
This one, I really would welcome some additional guidance from the board. The short of it is, if I was given a choice of, will we keep our facilities open because we have staff, or will we do outreach at the fair? I would say our facilities need to stay open. And so that priority with our small staff changes the way we have to approach the fair. Because as you're doing outreach, the board may not be aware, but COVID is spiking, and specifically it's spiking in this county. We are a leader in this front currently. And specifically, if you look at the information that's available, the thing that is of greatest concern to me is I look at the graph of how cases have gone historically, and there's a big spike around last year, around August, and that spike is exactly concurrent with when the fair occurred. And our numbers right now are about 4 or 5 times above where they were this time of the year before last year's fair. So last year's fair, the Solid Waste Authority did not have any physical presence other than posters. This year, I'd like to be able to do more outreach, but my priority is keeping our facilities open, and so I'm concerned about the staff that we put out there. And so at this point, I'm taking the following approach, that in general, refuse site attendants, namely our gate staff, are not going to be at the booth because the risk of exposure is too high. We're going to try to work with Recology and Hambro and the California Product Stewardship Council so we can get additional bodies there. And we're going to be wearing masks, but as a result of all of that, we may not have enough bodies to cover all of the shifts at the fair, and so there may be some times when our booth is empty, or our booth space is empty. And I welcome the guidance from the board as, do you think we're doing enough? Do you think we're doing too much? How do you think we should approach this? I welcome your input.
Any comments from the board members?
Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead.
I would start with a question. Director, how effective and important do you feel your presence at the fair is?
We've been a sponsor, this agency has been a sponsor of the fair as long as this agency has been in existence. We've always sponsored one of the days, and I think we sponsor Senior Day or Family Day, it moves around. But it is our best face-to-face outreach activity each year, or it has been. There are other alternatives. We could potentially staff booths at, say, the farmer's market. There are other things that we could do, but the Del Norte County Fair is an important community event, and we like to support and participate. But all things considered, if I was certain everybody who attended the fair was going to get sick, I wouldn't send anybody.
Safety first. Just that, I think there's other members of this board that would agree with that. Safety first. The health and welfare of your staff is most important. Yeah, that's my comment.
Valerie?
So is there any mandated reason why we need to be at the fair? Is there a state guideline? Is it a grant thing that we have to?
No mandated reason. It is called out in our source reduction and recycling element, in our education element, as one of the outreach activities we do. But like I said, there are other ways to make it up.
But it doesn't say specifically that there has to be a body there. It could be an outreach with the pamphlets and that sort of thing available.
That's right.
Okay. And we're not attracting new clients. There's no real other than education outreach.
That's right.
Okay. I'm in agreement with Commissioner Mike. Your last name just escaped me.
That guy, yeah. Commissioner on my right.
Thompson. But that really, I mean, bottom line, it's going to then hinder the services that we provide to this community in the end. So if there's no obligation, there's no mandate, we're going to still be able to provide educational material that'll be at the booth. I'm in full agreement that we do not have to staff it fully.
My question would be, have we seen any measurable outcomes from that outreach in the past? I mean, like, after the fair, do we see that our recycling center is like way cleaner, it's got no garbage in the, see, that's where I'm at, is we have no metric that, nothing, no way to measure that we're actually even making
We've done
a dent
surveys in the past, but the surveys have honestly been push surveys, in that they're intended to educate as people walk their way through the questions, right? And so they don't really tell you what people know or what they don't know or any behavior change. So there aren't metrics like that, as you say. That said, we always encounter several people every time we're at the fair who learn something new. I did not know I could recycle that. I had no idea I couldn't recycle that. That's trash, really? You can compost things in your backyard? You know, just all sorts of valuable education for those individuals. But it's not necessarily measurable. I see that Kira had something to add to this conversation.
Yeah, so we have gotten something out of value from the fair. We got Commissioner Tompkins here.
Well, there we go.
Last name, that's awesome.
So yeah, that's what drove my question. What kind of measurable outcomes can we get from taking that risk with our folks? But I think, Ted, you're the boss for a reason, and I appreciate you asking for the input. But you're right. You've got a facility to run, so I don't think you do a bad job running it. So I'm going to leave it right in your hands where it's supposed to be.
All right.
And
I can
I
accept
believe
that.
you will run
I'd
the facility pretty well.
I'd like to say something.
Go right ahead.
I understand that the outreach is kind of a voluntary thing. We don't have to be there, but at the same time, are we sending the wrong message when it comes to this? I mean, COVID's been around for the last few years, or a couple years, and it's something that we are going to eventually have to learn to live with. And so with that, I mean, every time a spike happens, we're not going to be able to shut things down. We're not going to be able to force people to do things to keep the spread down. So, I mean, we can encourage people to wear a mask. We can recommend it. We can encourage people to get the vaccine, you know. But in the end, it's going to come down to individual choices, and it has. I think us as an agency need to show the public that, you know, we are eventually going to get past this. And with that, it means getting back out there and showing the public that, you know, it's okay. We're going to be, at least have some presence, in my opinion. I mean, I understand that we do need to keep our doors open as an agency, but we can't keep cowering under this constant threat, because by the statistics, it's getting less deadly, not more. So I'm not trying to downplay some people's fears, but we have to look at the science, if in fact we are, and we have to make decisions that are, you know, mirror that.
And I would, yeah, I mean, if I could, I mean, I would totally support what you're saying there, but this isn't about fear, it's about staffing. And if we don't have the staff, because they're sick, right? And granted, you get a head cold just as easy. This isn't about living in fear, it's about being practical. And the practical response to this is that COVID is high spiking through our community, and it's not like you can still go to work with COVID. You could still go to work with head cold, I go to work with the flu sometimes. But with COVID, there is this government mandate right now that you have to stay home for the 5 days or the 10 days or whatever it is. I can't keep track. So this is more, I think, isn't about fear, it's about staffing, and it's about being responsible to the consumer and making sure that we're going to do everything that we can to make sure we keep our staffing up. That's my opinion.
And I would like to add to that also that, yes, it is, individuals do have to make choices, and it's better not to make it based on fear. On the other hand, it's another thing when your boss tells you you have to go. And I would not be the one who would direct our director to tell his staff that they have to do this. That's, to me, would be violating the individual freedom of his staff.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Inscore, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I guess because I'm sort of solution-oriented, it's an opportunity for us to pivot. I think if we can have a scaled-down presence at the fair that continues to show the work of the Solid Waste Management Authority as well as our partners at Recology and Hambro, that's a good thing. I think it's also an opportunity for us to pivot. You mentioned things like the farmers market. Maybe this is the time where we realize that instead of putting all of our outreach eggs in a 3-day basket in August, that we have a whole series of Saturdays and Wednesdays through a much larger span in what arguably would be a safer environment for all of us. We're outside, we're in fresh air, and we can do some educational outreach. There's still some time left for that. I think that Director Ward, just taking all of this discussion and then making some good management decisions that can keep people safe, while at the same time make sure that we can provide services and continue our mission of providing good education. I think you've heard from all of us, and I trust, as Chair Short said, that you're going to make the right decision. But I personally think that it's a good time to pivot and say, how can we maybe reach a different audience that maybe we haven't touched for a while by using those farmers markets as some ways to do that. You free up some time possibly out of your schedule or out of Kira's schedule on a Wednesday during the day to go down and touch some new people with some information that might be helpful to our community. So I don't see it as a negative. I see it as a pivot and a possibility that maybe we're actually going to do better outreach because of this. So, because I'm tired of everything that every time we have to talk about COVID, it's got to be negative. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that there's ways for us to look at this and say that we can turn this into a positive thing for all of us, regardless of what our opinions are. I don't have an opinion anymore. I just want to find solutions. So that's my thoughts.
I appreciate everybody's comments here. John, you had something first?
I was just going to mention, as a partner for the fair, last year we didn't do it. I've already started putting out feelers to see who's available, who's there. We really are just depleted as far as having somebody available that weekend. So when you mentioned that Hambro and ourselves are going to be there, we just don't have the availability right now. We already have people on vacation calendars, different things. So I just wanted to interject that we will not be there at the fair. Unfortunately, we just don't have the presence, but we will partner in the farmers markets and other things like you mentioned. Great ideas. We've done that on our own in the past. We'd love to partner and do that outreach, and I feel that's more of a local customer group anyway. So, thank you.
Well, I will say this: staffing shortages has been a common theme right now in the economy, and not just in the economy, but in the public sector as well. Yep. So, it is what it is at this time. At this time, people there's not as many workers available as well. So I understand.
So just so the board is aware, what I anticipate is there are going to be some times when you look to the corner where our booth is and there won't be people in the booth.
Sure.
We'll have shorter staff. I anticipate we will have some presence there, but it will be reduced.
I don't think this board is going to be pounding on your door asking why. I think we've,
I appreciate all the input, though. Very healthy discussion, and
A little bowl
I value your insights.
with candy in it, and everybody will be thankful.
yeah.
Instructions on how to recycle the wrapper.
Oh, I missed that one.
With instructions on how to recycle the wrapper.
And wash your garbage.
And wash your garbage, yeah. Okay, last item, 6.4, discussion and possible action regarding releasing a request for proposals for a professional grant administration and reporting services.
So this is essentially, previously when I discussed this issue with the board, essentially we have a U.S. Forest Service grant to help clean up on the Forest Service properties and places that are adjacent to the Smith River. And it takes a lot of field work, and we have DDR doing some of the cleanups, but it takes working with the Forest Service personnel to figure out where the locations are, scouting the locations, working with them to prioritize, and then assembling things. It's not a huge amount of work, but it is over an extended period of time, and I think we might be able to use a contractor well on this. So requesting approval to release this request for proposals after final edits, and hopefully we'll have a response back that you can review at the September meeting.
Very good. We have any questions or comments for Mr. Ward? Go ahead.
I just, my question then is then if we contract out the grant management, that's going then to reduce the amount of grant money available to do the work by
Not by much.
$11,000?
Not by much. By
Can you
I would,
remind us
I
what
would, the total grant is, I believe the amount to manage the grant would be less than 20% of the grant.
Okay.
The short of it.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that so we're not looking at this money coming out of something else. It's
You're
out of the grant.
absolutely right.
Okay,
It would be
then-
coming from the grant money to manage the grant monies that remain, but it would not be the majority of the grant money.
Okay.
Then I will make a motion that we approve this.
Have a
Second.
motion?
Second.
And Mike, thank you for a second.
Jason beat me to it.
Oh, did he? I missed it, sorry.
He's the quickest on the draw.
Kara can write down whoever she wants for the second. Okay, is there any public comment on this item?
So, quick silver tongue over there.
Okay, seeing no public comment, Kara, can you pull the vote, please?
Commissioner Tompkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Starkey?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Chair Short?
And that's a yes for me. Thank you all for very good, healthy discussion on these items. And I will, at this time, adjourn this meeting to the next regular meeting of the Delaware Solid Waste Management Authority, scheduled for 4 p.m. Tuesday, August 16th at the Flynn Center, right here. And just for your information, Mr. Ward, I will not be here